Hello, music fans. I thought I'd make a video about metal albums that critics and other reviewers seem to not really like and rate poorly, but that I think are great. Like 9 out of 10, most of these albums. That's kind of how I feel about them. But other people seem to think that they're kind of mediocre to downright bad. The criteria for getting on this list would be, that I think they're great, but the industry sites that I checked to look at other reviewers' thoughts were Rate Your Music and Metal Music Archives. And to qualify for this list, those two scores had to sum to lower than 6.5 out of 10. And I'm going to go from the kind of least hated by the industry to the most hated by the industry and reviewers and critics. So yeah, my top four might be pretty surprising to people, and probably a lot of people watching will think that these albums are terrible and wonder why I even like them. But I want to defend some albums that aren't really liked. I made a similar video about prog or prog-related, prog-adjacent kind of albums. Some of the ones in that weren't super proggy, like I put like Muse and Queen on there, so just kind of almost prog. But I also came up with a lot of metal bands and albums that were hated that I kind of like, and made a similar list here. So I'm going to start right off with number 10, which is Killswitch Engage and their album As Daylight Dies from 2006. So Rate Your Music has this rated at 3.27 out of 5, and Metal Music Archives has it at 3.2 out of 5. It's their fourth lowest out of 8 on Rate Your Music, and their second lowest out of their 8 albums on Metal Music Archives. But to me, this is their best album. Songs like Daylight Dies, This Is Absolution, The Arms of Sorrow, and My Curse are some of the most iconic metalcore songs ever to me. So this one had to make it on my list. It seems like people are just kind of lukewarm on it. People don't seem to have this be their favorite, but for me it is. I also like a lot of their other albums too. They're very consistent, and they don't really put out anything that bad. I know a lot of people like End of Heartache. That's probably my second favorite. But yeah, I honestly just have to say this one's my favorite of theirs. My number 9 hated by critics but loved by me metal album would be All That Remains with their album Overcome from 2008. This is given a 2.7 out of 5 on Rate Your Music and a 3.75 out of 5 on Metal Music Archives. So not too hated there, but the total of those scores is 6.45 out of 10. And yeah, this on Rate Your Music, this was rated in like the middle of the pack, 5th out of their 9 albums. And on Metal Music Archives, this is their 3rd lowest out of their 9 albums. I wouldn't go as far as saying this is my favorite album of theirs, because I mean for this one, my favorite is obvious and kind of aligns with what the masses are. My favorite All That Remains album is Fall of Ideals, and my second favorite is For We Are Many. But Overcome from 2008 would be my 3rd favorite All That Remains album. And yeah, it seems like people on Rate Your Music just really don't like this band in general. None of their albums really have good scores there. I can understand that. It's not for everybody. And I agree with the people on that site that Madness from 2017 is by far All That Remains' worst album. That one honestly might be among the 10 worst albums I've ever heard from a band that I like, and that I know can do better. Yet somehow the people on Metal Music Archives, who seem to like All That Remains more than the people on Rate Your Music, they rated Madness higher than Overcome, which just blows my mind. I just can't understand how people would like Madness more than Overcome. I'd say my favorite song from Overcome would be Chiron, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I love the acoustic guitar break right before the solo. Amazing riffs, great vocal delivery and amazing guitar solo. Now let's move on to my number 8 album that's hated by reviewers but loved by me, and that's Deftones with their first album, Adrenaline, from 1995. It's the second lowest rated of theirs on Rate Your Music with 3.32 out of 5. Lowest rated on Metal Music Archives with 3.12 out of 5, so a sum of 6.44 out of 10 there. And it is their first album. They're still kind of figuring out their identity and sound. I could see why it would be like lower among Deftones records. It's probably my third least favorite out of their 9 albums, but I think every Deftones album is great, and they don't really have any bad or even mediocre ones, so I wanted to put this on the list as well. Jumping into my number 7, Lamb of God with their self-titled album from 2020. This got a 2.93 out of 5 on Rate Your Music, their second lowest rated there, and 3.41 out of 5 on Metal Music Archives, also their second lowest there. This is their most recent album, and I know these groove metal kings have gone a bit softer. They started featuring some clean singing parts, which you would never hear on their earlier stuff, but I still really like this album, so it's on the list. Number 6 is going to be Bullet for My Valentine with their album Fever from 2010. This got a 2.5 out of 5 on Rate Your Music, which is their third lowest score there, and a 3.82 out of 5 on Metal Music Archives. Actually, their second highest rated there, so that's interesting. But the total there is 6.32 out of 10. This is the third album they made, and I'd say to me it's their third best out of their 7 albums. Basically, I like their first 3 albums the best. So The Poison is their first one, that's my favorite. Scream Aim Fire is their second one, that's my second favorite. And then Fever, this one, is their third, my third favorite of theirs. And yeah, one of my favorite songs from theirs is on this album, and that's the opener, Your Betrayal. And some people seem to think this album is where Bullet for My Valentine dropped off in quality, but I feel it's the next one. I like their first 3 albums, then I'm kind of not on the Bullet for My Valentine train anymore after that. It's the 4 that they did after were not nearly as strong, in my opinion. And I especially hate the album Temper Temper, and it does seem like a lot of people on the internet agree that that one is bad and their worst. And yeah, that one is kind of like All That Remains with Madness. Like I just cringe when I hear Madness by All That Remains and Temper Temper by Bullet for My Valentine. Just such terrible albums from bands that have so much potential. All right, moving on to my number 5. And this is Soilwork with their album Sworn to a Great Divide from 2007. It's got a 2.9 out of 5 on Rate Your Music and is their lowest rated album there, and a 3.33 on Rate Your Music, their third lowest rated album there. For me, this is like a middle of the pack Soilwork album. Like I rank it 6th out of their 11 albums. I don't get why people put it near the bottom. It seems like a pretty typical album for them from my perspective. They usually put out good quality. They don't really have any bad albums, so I really just don't know why this is rated low. I didn't really know this was a hated album, but when I started kind of looking at rating sites for this video, I just saw that this one was rated lower, and I just couldn't understand why. I was listening to it, it seemed perfectly fine to me. Pretty solid actually, so I put it on here. Now my top 4, this is where it gets really interesting, and I think a lot of people really hate these albums, but I want to defend them a little bit. My number 4 is going to be a bit of a shocker, is Judas Priest with their album Nostradamus from 2008. This is their third lowest rated on both Rate Your Music and Metal Music Archives. 2.93 out of 5 and 3.21 out of 5 respectfully, so 6.14 out of 10 there. But to me, this is my 4th favorite out of their 18 albums after Painkiller, Sad Wings of Destiny, and Defenders of the Faith. And I think it's hated because it's really long and because there are a lot of slower songs on it. And it tends to alternate between a slow song and then a fast song for the most part. So it's about 50-50 in terms of fast and slow. Whereas most Judas Priest albums are like 90% fast and like 10% slow. So I think that's one reason why people don't like it. And a lot of the tracks are longer than most Judas Priest songs too. So I feel like it's more like progressive metal mixed with doom metal than their typical heavy metal style. I think that's another reason why Priest fans hate this. And since I like progressive metal and I like that epic doomy sounding stuff, I actually like this album a lot. There's also great symphonic and cinematic sounding songs like Sands of Time, which flows perfectly into the song Pestilence and Plague. And some of the vocal delivery is really operatic. I agree and understand the lyrics are pretty cheesy, but I always think Judas Priest lyrics are cheesy and they're just fun. So I like this album. My number 3 album that's hated by reviewers but liked by me is Dragonforce with Inhuman Rampage from 2006. This is 2.62 out of 5 on Rate Your Music, their lowest rated album there, and 3.49 out of 5 on Metal Music Archives, their second lowest rated there, with a combined score of 6.11 out of 10. And this is the album that really popularized Dragonforce. It features their big hit that was the hardest song to play in Guitar Hero 3, Through the Fire and Flames. This is also the album that got me into Dragonforce. I believe I heard it just before the Guitar Hero game came out, after I saw online that the song won Best Guitar Solo of the Year contest, some contest, I don't know. I was a guitar nerd at the time, playing lots of guitar, and I was just impressed by it. It's not my favorite Dragonforce album, though. I actually like a few of their newer albums with their newer singer even better. Probably my 4th favorite out of their 8 albums. I like Maximum Overload from 2014, Reaching into Infinity from 2017, and The Power Within from 2012. So I really like their new singer better than their older singer. But I think people just don't like Dragonforce in general. Their music and lyrics are cheesy, and I understand, but they are self-aware, so it's all in good fun. If you want to just hear about dragons and valleys and mountains and epic journeys and cheesy stuff like that, that's kind of what it's about. But it's just fun. People also seem to say incorrectly, they say that they can't play these songs properly and it's all studio magic. And I think they say that because there's some old YouTube videos where they mess up a lot of parts live, and like they're probably drunk. So I've seen plenty of live videos where they can play it all pretty well. And even if they miss a note here or there in these like really fast solos, it's not that kind of music. Like they're not that kind of band where they're trying to play perfectly tight technical progressive music and play it like to a click and hit every note perfectly every night. Like it's just flashy and fun, fast and explosive, energetic power metal. It's not that kind of tight, technical, progressive music. So, I mean, harmonically it's simple, melodically it's simple, rhythmically it's pretty simple. It's just really fast and explosive music with Pac-Man noises and stuff like that. Really enjoyable though. Nobody does that better than them. Now we're in the top 2 here. Number 2 is going to be by Atreyu, and the album's A Death Grip on Yesterday from 2006. Rate Your Music has this at 2.71 out of 5. It's still the second highest rated of their albums, so people on Rate Your Music really don't like Atreyu. I can kind of see why. They've definitely taken a nosedive lately in terms of their quality. Metal Music Archives gives this 2.86 out of 5, which is actually their lowest rated album there, which I do not understand. So total combined score of 5.57 out of 10. This to me is my second favorite of their albums. It's my favorite would be 2004's The Curse. And I don't really like their latest 2 albums, In Our Wake and Baptize. I don't like those ones really. But this one, 2006, A Death Grip on Yesterday, it's just an amazing metalcore album for me. Well, they were at their peak. I love how it just starts off insanely heavy with Creature, I think Shameful and X's and O's are my favorite songs on the album for their nice blend of heaviness and catchiness. And I even like the slower song, The Theft. Just a really solid, like iconic metalcore album. I think it should be rated higher than it is on those sites. But I understand if they want to rate In Our Wake and Baptize low, I get that. But this one is just great. And my number one, hated by reviewers but loved by me, is by the band In Flames, and the album's called Battles from 2016. And I'm probably going to get crucified for saying I like this one, because this is their lowest rated album on both Rate Your Music and Metal Music Archives. 2.23 out of 5 and 2.43 out of 5. So a total score of 4.63 out of 10. This is the only one on my list here that got a combined score of lower than even 5 out of 10. So like, this is, people just say this is an abysmal failure of an album, I guess. But my preferences for In Flames music seems to be the opposite of almost everyone else I see comment online about In Flames. I like their early melodic death metal stuff as well. I also like their newer alternative metal stuff. But very weirdly, my two favorite albums from them are from their alternative metal phase and are often the ones that people hate the most, which are 2014 Siren Charms, and is my favorite, and my second would be 2016's Battles. And I just find these have the catchiest choruses, and I remember the songs better, and I feel they still have the great guitar riffs that like the early stuff had. And in particular the songs Like Sand, which is just really catchy chorus, like I want the whole world, the whole world, the whole world in my hands, but it's just slipping through like sand. Yeah, just really catchy. It's got an aggressive verse, but then it has this really catchy sing-along chorus. Also, Through My Eyes is another great song on that album. Another catchy chorus, the if you could see it through my eyes, why are we so different? Want you to feel it, want you to know what it was like, then maybe you'll understand. And that's from Battles. Really catchy, really awesome to me. It almost sounds like metalcore, which is a genre that I typically listen to more than melodic death metal. Maybe that's why I like this one more. Everybody seems to hate this and hate this whole phase of In Flames, wants them to return to their early sound like Lunar Strain and Jester Race and Horacle and Colony. And those are all cool to me too. I like both phases of the band. I'm okay with the new direction of the band. Honestly, I would listen to the newer stuff even more often than the old stuff, and I find it catchier. It's just a different style, alternative metal versus melodic death metal, and I think there's not a lot of people that can appreciate both, so most of their fans are probably just listening to one era of the band or the other, but I'll listen to it all. I enjoy In Flames, and yeah, sorry but not sorry for putting this one here and defending it. And that's it for today. 10 albums that reviewers hate, 10 metal albums that reviewers hate that I like. I made a similar video for prog albums or prog-related albums, so if you like this concept, definitely check that out. I'm thinking maybe I'll do one where I talk about albums that reviewers online hate that I also hate. So some video about where I agree with the online reviewers about things that are crappy. And then maybe I'll look at albums that reviewers like a lot that I also like a lot, as well as albums that reviewers like a lot that I think are overrated. So these are some ideas that I'm just tossing around for future videos. Let me know which of those concepts sounds the most interesting to you, if which one you would want to watch, and I'll put some research into it and make a list. Till next time, peace out.